Hi, I'm Richard Schwartz, and I want to talk to you about very, very important issues, especially nowadays. Should people be vegans or at least vegetarians? And first to start, I want to give just a little bit of background about myself. I'm a professor emeritus of mathematics at the College of Staten Island and president emeritus of Jewish Veg, and that was formerly Jewish Vegetarians of North America. And just a little idea of how I got involved with this, teaching math at the College of Staten Island. And I came up with a special course called Mathematics in the Environment to try to motivate liberal arts and science students. Unique course, there was no book even for it, so I wrote this book, Mathematics and Global Survival. And over the years, had many editions of it, basic math, but all applied to the world and global issues. And one year we discussed world hunger and found out about how many people were starving, how many people were malnourished. Thought, well, I guess we just can't produce enough food for the world. But then I read this wonderful book by Francis Moore Pay, Diet for a Small Planet, and it talked about how wasteful animal-based diets are. That, for example, 70% of the grain produced in the U.S. is fed to animals destined for slaughter. And so that made me became a vegetarian in 1978 when I recognized that. And the case was so strong, it started how to do it. Actually, 2000 became a vegan and really promoting it. And here's all the values we're going to be discussing. And just to add a little bit of humor, I had this special tie with all kinds of fruit and another tie with all kinds of vegetables. And, these are so strong over the years. I've written many books. Rather than mentioning all of them, I wanted to show you some of the more important ones, Judaism and vegetarianism. And the first edition was 1978. This is the third edition, 2001. 1978, indicating that they've really been involved over 40 years in promoting vegetarianism and more recently veganism. And I'm going to try to indicate the reasons for that in this talk. And more recently, from vegetarianism, moving on, as most of the activists have, to veganism. Just want to adjust this a bit. And here it is, Vegan Revolution, Saving Our World, Revitalizing Judaism. And the issues are so, so important that I'm happy to send 3 PDFs of this book and other recent books. Anybody that emails me, my email address is going to be on the screen later at the end. So if you don't get it now, you can get it later. It's veggierich@gmail.com. That's VEGGIERICH@gmail.com. And okay, so moving on. Also, I produced this. I'm an associate producer, along with a multi-award-winning producer, Sacred Duty, Applying Jewish Values to Help Heal the World. And that can be watched at YouTube and in other places. Very powerful case for vegetarianism and for veganism. And trying to get the word out as much as possible. We actually had a cover story in the Jerusalem Post, why Jews should be vegans. By the way, this talk is mainly based on Jewish values, but of course other religions have similar teachings on compassion, on sharing, on justice, on peace, so that others can adapt the Jewish teachings to their own religions if they are of another religion. So again, here's the Should Jews Be Vegan, the cover story in the Jerusalem Report, and making a powerful case. Nobody's been able really to refute the basic argument that I make here. Okay. Okay. So here it is. Goes way back to the biblical teachings, right in the first chapter of the Torah, the Jewish Bible. It's chapter 1 of Genesis, verse 29. God's first dietary regimen, strict cleanliness in the Garden of Eden, all vegan, It talks about the herbs in the field and the fruit of the trees, for example. And the ideal time to come, the Jews yearn for, the Messianic period, will also be vegan based on the powerful teachings of Isaiah, that in that ideal time, the wolf will dwell with the lamb, the lion will eat straw like the ox, no one shall hurt nor destroy on all of God's holy mountain. Okay, so we want to get into the main reasons for veganism. I'm going to say that all basic Jewish values, and actually basically all religious values. So I'm going to discuss each one of these, what the Jewish teachings, religious teachings are, and how the reality differs so much from them. So to protect our health, treat animals with compassion, protect the environment, conserve natural resources, reduce hunger, and pursue peace. So we start out with the teachings and then the realities. So the Jewish teachings on health, well, it says, V'nishmatem, the old enough shall take him, in Deuteronomy, diligently guard your health. And the mitzvot, the commandments with the health are far more important than the ones just on ritual matters. Okay, so because nefesh, that's a religious mandate, there's everything possible to save a human life. Judaism has 613 commandments. 610 can be overridden if it would help to save life. The only three that can't are murder, idolatry, and sexual immorality. Okay, so those are the teachings. What are the realities? A vegan diet can help many ways. It can promote weight loss, reduce the risk of heart disease, lower cholesterol, lower the chance of getting certain types of cancer, and manage diabetes. And we see not only can reduce the risk, it actually reverse heart disease, type 2 diabetes, for example. And probably can't see all of this, but here's the reality. The more meat in the diet, here's high meat consumption, high heart disease, high bowel cancer. On the other hand, if there's a very little meat in the diet, there'll be far, far less heart disease, far, far less bowel cancer. You can see the trend here as the meat consumption goes down, the disease rate goes up. So that's a bottom line regarding health. And Dr. Dean on it, he showed you can actually reverse heart disease and on a very low fat, pretty much a vegan diet. And initially, insurance companies wouldn't insure for his method, but later, seeing that it's actually less expensive and longer lasting, they now do that. So, and he had tremendous success in reducing heart disease. And here's Dr. Neil Barnard. He's got a book, You Can Actually Reverse Type 2 Diabetes and improve conditions for type 1. And here's T. Coleman Campbell, and he directed a China study that was called the Grand Prix of Epidemiology by the New York Times. You only do it in China because people tend to live in the same village year after year, and the diets vary from village to village. And we found out that even small amounts of animal protein had negative health effects. And many studies, here's something by a long-time cancer surgeon, breast cancer surgeon, but he started investigating and found that you can actually very, very strongly decrease the risk of breast cancer on a vegan diet. That's the most important life choice that can help reduce the risk of breast cancer. Okay, so all kinds of studies. Here's one wartime study, and you notice this is the years of World War II, 1940, 1945 over here. And wartime conditions, the fat content went down, the animal consumption went down, And even though it's a time of stress in wartime, the death rates actually went down only to start increasing again when the war ended and the meat consumption started to increase again. And here it is that animal-based diets high in cholesterol. As the cholesterol increases this way, the rate of heart disease increases. And just two other graphs showing the same trend. So cholesterol is very bad in the diet. And you might wonder what foods have that cholesterol. And here's the very interesting, important thing. Every plant food, whether it be grains, vegetables, nuts, seeds, fruit, legumes, or vegetable oil, they all have zero amounts of cholesterol. On the other hand, animal products very high, especially eggs. And that is why there's like an epidemic of disease in the world today. Okay, so actually somebody can really cut their cholesterol on this plant-based diet and reduce their risk very sharply for heart disease. Okay, why is this? Well, we are much closer to herbivorous animals than the carnivorous ones. In terms of our teeth, look at these. The teeth, very good for grinding food. We can move them mouth left to right, up and down. Compare that to the very sharp, hard, dagger-like teeth of a tiger, carnivorous animal, or even of a bear, an omnivorous animal who could eat meat products, but also some plant products as well. And what a difference. Look at our hands compared to the claws. Claws of an animal designed to tear apart the flesh of a prey animal. So that can make a difference. This hand is perfect for picking an orange or an apple from a tree, or a potato, or a carrot from the ground. In addition, there's a herbivorous animal, very long intestinal system, and it's much longer. For example, for human beings, the intestinal system is like 4 times longer than it is for a carnivorous animal per unit height. And this is very good for a plant-based diet because it takes a while, plenty of time for all the vitamins, minerals, other positive nutrients in fruits, vegetables, other plant products to be absorbed by the body, but very bad with meat that takes a long time. It can decompose and decay and cause diseases. Okay, so because of that, we have a very unnatural diet in terms of meat, milk, eggs, other animal products. So the age of puberty in girls has become much lower. And since they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, here is a picture, notice all of them are down. Norway, age of puberty for young girls, first period, 17, it's like 17 and a half. Oops, to go back to that. And down, down, down from over 17 to under 13, quite a drop. And that's all the way up to 1960. And that trend has continued to 2000 and beyond. So now, many young ladies between 12 and 13, and that's an average, so some girls could have it as young as 10, certainly far too young to have the maturity to have a baby, but they can at that age. Okay, so what keeps people away from plant-based diets is a so-called protein myth. You can get protein from many plant sources, nuts and seeds, legumes, even fruits and vegetables. All plant products have some amounts of protein. Okay, and here is the story. For human beings, and the human baby doubles his or her birth rate in about half a year, 180 days. But if you bring this across, it's only 5 or 6% of calories from protein in the mother's breast milk. On the other hand, a rat is almost 50%, maybe about 48% here. A lot of research was done on rats, and that was very misleading. So human beings need a lot less, and maybe as they get older, it's even 10%, but that can be easily obtained through a balanced plant-based diet. And it's like very misleading. What's a healthy eating plate? Whole grains, wonderful, vegetables, great, fruits, very good. But then they say healthy protein, implying that these foods don't have any, which is really wrong. So what's left is the meat and dairy and other animal products. So that is very misleading, very harmful to health. And again, there's a calcium myth as well. You know, the dairy industry promotes you need a lot of dairy to have avoid osteoporosis. But China studies showed before indicated many Chinese are lactose intolerant. Get very little dairy, far less calcium than say in the U.S. and other developed countries. Yet they have far less osteoporosis. Matter of fact, the countries with the most osteoporosis are the U.S., Israel, Scandinavian countries, where they have a lot of animal products. Okay, so here there's a connection why animal protein is causing osteoporosis, and because of that, the animal protein causes calcium to be deleted from the body and in the urine, and that could be a factor because the human body can absorb all the fat, all the carbohydrates we take in, but there's a limited amount of protein. So when the excess protein is excreted, some of the calcium will be excreted with it, and that's shown by this graph. And this is calcium in the urine. Notice if the protein intake is high, that is high calcium loss in the urine. If it's medium, intermediate amount, and if there's a low amount of protein, animal protein mainly, then it is less. So again, the high animal protein diet causes a lot of calcium. So a person can be drinking a lot of milk, getting a lot of calcium, and yet still have a negative calcium balance. Well, again, the same idea, healthy plate guide, but that includes fish and meat and eggs, a lot of animal products. So that has been shown, as indicated before, to have high cholesterol and therefore to be a threat, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, osteoporosis. Okay, other negative health effects, many past epidemics or pandemics were caused by animal-based diets, and it makes continuation, a growing appetite for meat, that makes future pandemics more likely. And many of the previous pandemics were caused by animal agriculture, avian flu, bird flu, swine flu, MERS, SARS, Ebola, and they're not sure, there's some dispute, but likely the recent coronavirus that have caused so much hardship, so many deaths, so much illness recently. Okay, and again, they're concerned about a bird flu, or avian flu outbreak. Many birds had been killed, and it says the most inhumane ways. Okay, one other negative effect before we move on from health is that antibiotics are losing their effectiveness, partly because most of the antibiotics in the Western world are used in animal feed to try to prevent disease during the very unnatural conditions that the animals are in, and it also increases their growth, although they don't really know the reason for that. But so antibiotics are losing their effectiveness, and that can make treating disease much more difficult. Okay, so that should be enough by itself. The fact that we can really reduce disease, death rates with plant-based diets, but we have 5 more reasons for people to be vegans or at least to be vegetarians. Okay, so first we start out with religious teachings. I said, in this case, Jewish, but the other religions, similar teachings. Jews had to be Rahmanim b'nei Rahmanim, which means compassionate children of compassionate ancestors. We are imitated God whose compassion is over all of his works, of course, including all the animals. And then in the book of Proverbs, it says the righteous individual considers the lives of his or her animals. So strong religious teachings and some specifics in the Bible. It says you can't muzzle an ox while the threshing in the field. That it would be a frustration to the animal seeing all the products that it loves and not being able to eat them. Can't yoke a strong animal with a weak animal. That would be difficult for both. And two is to feed a pet or any farm animal before sitting down for his or her own meal. And it's even part of the Ten Commandments, would indicate that not only people are to rest on the Sabbath day or Shabbat, but animals as well. But just like with health, the realities are far from the teachings. These are so-called battery cages. Let's go back, where you see there are chicks or birds, hens, very small cages on top of others, if we show it in the picture. And it's so crowded here, they can't even raise a wing. Because of that, they could peck at each other in frustration of unnatural conditions, instead of giving, and that can harm some other hens, instead of giving them some more space, they beat the birds at a very young age, as shown here, very painful procedure without any painkiller, without any anesthesia. Okay, and so that can really harm the animals greatly. But that's the females, very hard life. But the males don't even last a day in most cases, because they can't, that is at the egg-laying hatcheries, they can't lay eggs when they haven't been genetically programmed to have much flesh. So here they are ground up, or they might be put into plastic bags where they're killed by the weight of birds above them, or they suffocate. So very bad conditions for chicks at the egg-laying hatcheries. Things are not much better for dairy cows, the other females, and they're here on what they call, the industry calls a rank rat. And the next picture is not very nice, but here it's being artificially inseminated, and that happens every single year. Well, they can produce milk, so that they produce milk every year. And what makes it really bad is their babies are taken away right away to be raised for veal, or if they're females, to eventually also be other dairy cows. Well, just as with people love to play with their animals, but they don't have much of a chance for that. And that is why, among other things, to get the word out, I wrote an ebook the summer of 2022, Restoring and Transforming the Ancient Jewish New Year for Animals. It was traditionally for tithing. That's why we have the idea of transforming it. The ideal time has come. So the idea is to transform it into a day devoted to increasing awareness of Jewish teachings on compassion for animals and how far the realities for animals are from those teachings. And it's a little bit distorted picture. So here it is again. So that's just an idea to get the word out, to get people to recognize the powerful Jewish and other religious teachings on compassion for animals and how far the realities for animals are from these teachings. And again, to get the word out, I've had some Zoom webinars, and here it is again about transforming the ancient Jewish nature for animals, and that I gave in 2022. Among many things I'm trying to do to increase awareness. Okay, so we talked about health, we talked about compassion for animals. Now, perhaps the most important reason to be a vegan or at least a vegetarian, environmental teachings. And two of the teachings are that right in the beginning, in Genesis, first book of the Bible, chapter 2, human being was put into the garden to work the land and to guard it. And to guard it. So we are to be guardians of the world, partners and co-workers with God in protecting the environment. And we were given dominion, and that's probably the teaching the Bible most misinterpreted. That's not a blank check. The sages interpret it as responsible stewardship or guardianship. Just to give like an analogy, if the person has a very big garden but doesn't have the time or ability to take care of it, he or she could hire a gardener, giving that gardener really dominion to do whatever is possible to see that the garden thrives as much as possible. So, and of course, a mother has the dominion over an infant, but there too, to do everything possible for the health of that baby. So here are some of the negative environmental effects of animal-based diet. Deforestation happening very strongly, unfortunately. Soil erosion and depletion, water pollution from the waste of the animals, from the pesticides used to grow the feed crops for the animals, tremendous loss of biodiversity. We're losing mammals and fish. For example, they think that by the middle of this century, the oceans can be almost devoid of fish because so much overfishing, and most important, climate change. So we're going to focus on that for the rest of the discussion about the environmental teachings. Okay, so again, it's not just me. I'm not a scientist, so I have a PhD in engineering, but I try to be a bridge between the scientist and the average person. But here's the important thing, there's a tremendously strong scientific consensus. 97% of climate scientists, all of the major science academies worldwide, and thousands of peer-reviewed articles. This is the most important because I can have an opinion, you can have an opinion, but a peer-reviewed article means, and it's in a respected journal, that other experts have seen fit to have that article published. Anyway, all of these sources say climate change exists, and it's a major threat to humanity, and human activities are a major cause of that climate change. Okay, moving on. This is the UN Secretary General, and based on all kinds of studies the UN representatives have done, he's called climate change a cold threat to humanity. And more recently, he said we should not talk about global warming, but really global boiling. We're going to talk a little bit more about that soon. And delay means death. We don't have that much more time. That message is reinforced by the most important climate change group, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The reason it's so important is that it's intergovernmental. Many governments, many countries, and we have climate experts from these countries. They have a consensus document. And in 2018, speaking in terms of denial or delay means death, they said in 2018 that we need major, actually unprecedented changes, improvements by 2030 in order to avert the worst possibilities of climate change. Unfortunately, since then, things have only increased. Here it is, up to 2022, 4 years later. Okay, so we're really moving in an incorrect direction, having many negative effects. Okay, one of the most important graphs, and this line here is the average for the 20th century. So you can see it was below average for up to about the middle, then on and off. But here it's been continuing going up, up, and up. And the 8 hottest years are the last 8 years. And as I tape this, actually in January 8th, 2024, it was just announced that 2023 was the warmest, the hottest year in recorded history. Okay, and here are some of the things we've been saying. Hottest 8 years, last 8 years, and every year in this century, all 23 years, are among the hottest 24 years in recorded history. Every decade since the 1970s has been hotter than the previous decade, so that things are going up, and it's projecting that 2024 very likely will be one of the hottest and could be the hottest because we will have an El Nino that heats things up for the entire year. Okay, and unfortunately, we ain't seen nothing yet. We are about 1.2, 1.3 degrees Celsius on the average. Well, this hottest year was almost close to 1.5, and it's shown here because the experts hope not to pass that, like a threshold, but you can see different scenarios, but it's projected to hit 1.5 before the middle of the century, and even 2 by middle of the century. We go back here. But look at the end of the century projected, again, a lot of possible scenarios, but even in the least dangerous case, about 3. So that's more than doubling of what we now have. And we're going to see we have so many serious climate effects already. So you can imagine what happens when it gets this much hotter. Really, climate change is an existential threat to the entire world. Okay, so let's take a look at the negative effects. The droughts have been increasing, rivers and lakes have been drying up, and these hot conditions makes wildfires more likely, and they have been increasing. In 2023, there were so many fires in Canada, so severe that they made the air quality certain periods in the northeast of the U.S. about the worst of the in the world. So all tremendous threats, and hurricanes have been increasing, and of course we've always had them. They've had things that they called 100-year storms, where they expected maybe once a year they would get such a severe storm. Now they're happening sometimes every year, sometimes even more than a year, and they're more severe for 3 reasons. First, the waters have gotten higher. We'll see more about that later. And that means when the storm occurs, there's a storm surge that is greater and the waters move further into land. And another thing is that the hotter atmosphere can hold more moisture. So when we do have rain or snow, there's more precipitation. Maybe most important, that water is much warmer, and that gives more energy to the storms as it passes. Recently, we had a tropical storm, pretty severe, but nothing like a hurricane. But by the time it got onto land, it was like a Category 3 hurricane. So things are getting worse, and you can see some of the damage that some of the hurricanes are producing in this part of the slide. Okay, the floods are increasing because of the heavy rainfall, as we mentioned, more water in the atmosphere, greater storm surges, and permafrost is melting, as are the glaciers and the polar ice cap. This is very significant because underneath the permafrost shown here, there's methane and other potent greenhouse gases, and as it melts and these greenhouse gases escape into the atmosphere, that increases the climate change and climate threats. As we mentioned, glaciers are melting all over the world, and that can eventually have negative effects on agriculture, because agriculture depends on the glaciers melting in the springtime. You know, they freeze up in the winter and melt, but they're melting so fast, some of the glaciers will not be around or will be far less. So that means less irrigation water and therefore a threat to agriculture. Okay, in addition, it's very, very big area. Greenland melting, notice from here to here, for example, and this is such a big area. If that significant amount of that melt, that could really raise the waters quite a bit and devastate the coastal cities. And of course, again, that seas are rising only about an average of 8 inches, 20 centimeters so far, but it could be many, many feet soon by the end of the century, certainly. And already they have what they call sunny day flooding in coastal cities like Miami, Florida. So since so much of the world's people, so many of the world's people are close to the oceans or close to rivers, that this could be very significant as the seas continue to rise. And again, here, just one example where I am now in Israel, where large parts of the coastline could be lost, and that's only about 25 years from now. So very dangerous conditions. And you mentioned extinction of animals. The polar bears are really in danger. Much of their ice is melting, and they depend on that for living and hunting. Okay, and more extreme weather is to hit the Mediterranean. By the way, this area heating up more than the average, so that could be very serious. And more heat wave floods are projected. Okay, now things, unfortunately, you think, sorry to give such a negative view so far, negative picture, but things are likely to, unfortunately, get far worse for reasons, but I have pictures for each of them, so move on to them. Well, you've seen this picture before, and again, we're now getting close to 1.5, but it's going up, and it could be 3, 4, 5, maybe more degrees Celsius. It could actually be an unlivable world. So that's why changes have to be made very shortly. Okay, and this is one of the most important graphs here. This is atmospheric carbon dioxide. Notice it's constantly going up, little ups and downs depending on the season of the year. And if this started way back around 1880 or so, when the Industrial Revolution started, it'd be about 285 parts per million, up and up and up to about 420, increasing by 2 or 3 parts per million per year. But we have to decrease because 420 is way above the 350 parts per million that climate experts think is the threshold for climate stability. So this is why there were so many storms and floods, and heat waves, so many serious climate events. And again, it's going up. What has to happen somehow is it has to really start dropping, hopefully way down to that 350, so we can leave a decent, habitable, environmentally sustainable world for the future generations. Okay, another reason things are likely to be getting worse is because of the storms and the droughts, etc. The climate experts think there'll be tens of millions, possibly even hundreds of millions, desperate refugees fleeing the effects of climate change. And according to the military experts, these millions and millions, maybe hundreds of millions desperate refugees, that makes instability, terrorism, and war more likely. Matter of fact, there's already been civil wars in Syria and Sudan because of climate change. 5 or 6 years of a severe drought, the farms failed, farmers moved into the city, already overcrowded, and that ended up in civil wars, a major factor. Okay, now, maybe most important is something called positive feedback loops, self-reinforcing positive feedback loops, vicious cycles, because when climate events occur, they make future events more likely. Here's an example. When firefighters are increasing, here's a picture of it here. Talked about Canada, Greece, California, so many. They make future fires and other climate events more likely. 3 reasons. Many trees, of course, are burned, destroyed. They no longer sequester carbon dioxide. They were absorbing it. It's taking away a sink from that. Okay. It's almost like stuffing up a bathtub outlet to a certain extent. And the trees that stored carbon dioxide, that's being emitted into the atmosphere, added to the increase of carbon dioxide, for example, from fossil fuel emission. And of course, many homes have been destroyed here, many cars destroyed. You need more energy to rebuild, reduce new cars. And that, of course, requires fossil fuels to a large extent. And that means more greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, here's another important example. In the Arctic, when the sun hits ice or snow, it's very good reflector. 70 to 90% of the sun's rays is reflected back out into space. But eventually some of that's going to melt, and when it hits this, let's talk of water or land, only 6%. So that more and more is absorbed, which means more and more will be melted, and more dark area, more and more sun's rays absorbed. So here again is another example of vicious cycle. One other quick example is, of course, as it gets hotter, people use more air conditioning, and that also means more fossil fuel burns, more greenhouse gas emissions. So I've been trying to get this message out. I think another co-authored climate change story in the Jerusalem Report. And so we want to see what are climate experts saying. What are some of the possible solutions? One, of course, is solar energy, and the prices have decreased sharply, more and more use, certainly a positive thing. And wind energy, also prices going down. So that, of course, is part of the answer, but that is ignoring the elephant in the room, or more accurately, the cow in the room. And we say that because replacing animal agriculture and shifting to a plant-based diet could drastically curb greenhouse gas emissions, and even more importantly, enable planting of trees to absorb that carbon dioxide. Taking that into account, the so-called possibility, potential, Salish Rao, an engineer, let's see, indicates here. Anyway, he wrote this paper, now Animal Agriculture, the leading cause of climate change. And here's a picture with his granddaughter. We promised that they're going to try to have climate change really reduced by 2026. He argues that at least 80% of greenhouse gas emissions due to animal culture, and this is a word I was looking for, that opportunity cost lost by not reforesting. And just a quick analogy, if a person can make $100 a day, but takes a day off and spends $100 to see a show, then he spent $100, but at the end of the day, he's down $200 because he missed the opportunity cost of working that day and making that $100. So by not planting trees that sequester to absorb carbon dioxide, that is an opportunity cost loss. And the problem is we're still cutting down trees, burning down forests, and what we're really doing is replacing land that had carbon sequestering trees, replacing it with methane belching cows. Okay, so this is an amazing statistic in a way. If you look at the ice-free land in the world, 43% used for grazing for animals and growing feed crops of corn, soy, oats, etc. for the animals. So, and much of that was forested land, such that there used to be 6 trillion trees in the world, millennia, thousands of years ago, and now it's roughly half of that at about 3 trillion. And that's why, okay, here it is, some pictures of burning of the, cutting of the trees, burning of the forest, and mainly the older trees, of course, being destroyed, and they were absorbing, sequestering what's carbon dioxide. And that's why I'm showing again perhaps the most important graph related to climate change, going up, 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 and up, going, as I said, to that dangerous 420, and still increasing 2 or 3 parts per million per year, way above this threshold for safety, climate sustainability of 350. So that is very bad, largely because so much of the world's land area has been deforested. And as I showed before, that's increasing about 2 or 3 parts per million per year, where we needed to start decreasing back to that 350 now. Okay, just another way of showing it, only about a quarter of the world's land area is used for cauliflower, carrots, other plant food. 3 billion, about 3/4 is used for animal products. That's why that adds up to that 43% of the world's land being used for grazing and growing feed crops for animals. And if that could be replanted, reforested, tremendous potential, that could bring down that carbon dioxide. That is the greatest hope. Other things have to be done: wind power, solar energy, better transportation, better light bulbs, better mass transit. But this is essential, have a chance to avert climate catastrophe. Okay, so once again, health is important, passion for animals, environment, especially climate change. So I want to quickly go through the other 3 teachings we mentioned about conservation of energy, reducing hunger, and pursuing peace. So there's a Jewish teaching, Baal Tashki, Bishana, Late in the Sword. It's based on Deuteronomy chapter 20, and actually it indicates there that even in wartime, you can't destroy fruit-bearing trees to build a battering ram to try to overcome an enemy fortification. And the Jewish sages expanded that very specific teaching involving warfare, trees, and using an axe to cut them down, and made it a general prohibition about not wasting or destroying anything of potential value. But again, the realities are different. Animal-based diets are very wasteful. Just one example: tremendous irrigation needed to grow the feed crop for animals, so it can take as much as 13 times as much water for a person on an animal-based diet than one on a plant-based diet. And its animal-based diets are also very wasteful: energy of grain and of land. It can take up to 20 times as much land, again, on an animal-based diet, largely because so much land is needed to grow the feed crops for the animals. So there can be 20 times as much land for an animal-based diet for a person than one on a plant-based diet. Okay, so again, so much more on this, and they said I'll be happy to share my books and other teachings. I have a website, and that's the jewish-vegan.org, where I'm really revising it now. It's going to have over 300 articles. Happy to send you links to some of the more important ones. But the teaching, it's on the prophetic reading on Yom Kippur, the holiest Jewish day, words of Isaiah: share your bread with the hungry, and teachings also in Deuteronomy. Farmer is to leave the corner of the field and the cleaning of the harvest for the poor. Okay, many other teachings on reducing hunger. One is that person sharing with the poor is almost like feeding God. Okay. And how the reality is there's a scandal of world hunger, and it's estimated now that maybe as many as 9 million people dying of hunger per year, and almost 10% of the world's people are chronically malnourished. And the vegan diet that could reduce hunger, decrease food waste, again, because so much the grain, soy, corn and oats fed to animals destined for slaughter. Mentioned at the beginning from that book by Francis Moore Pay, Diet for a Small Planet, pointed out as much as 70% the grain produced in the U.S. fed to animals destined for slaughter. And what makes it even more shameful, we are taking healthy foods like corn and oats and soy, high in fiber, high in complex carbohydrates. We feed them to the animals and we get just the opposite, devoid of fiber and complex carbohydrates, but very high in saturated fat and cholesterol. Okay, so we could feed many, many more people on a plant-based diet. The grain was fed to the people, soy and oats, corn, other things, hay, or the ones that can be fed to people instead of to animals. Okay. Okay, again, moving along, there's so much. And again, I'm offering books and articles for those who contact me, and be happy to send it to people. So line one is pursuing peace, and that may seem far from vegetarian and veganism. So first the teachings, and then try to show you the connection. So in the book of Psalms, it said, we seek peace and pursue it. It's very important. It's not just stay where you are and seek it, but to move to other places if necessary. Only things in the Jewish Bible we're to pursue, and that's peace and justice. And Israelites went to war, but there's a prophetic dream that in the idea of time, nations shall build their swords into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks, and not learn war anymore. So it's Hebrew sages, Jewish sages, found that the word lechem, which means bread, and milchama, word for war, they come from the same root. And deduced from that, when there's a shortage of grain and other resources, people are more likely to go to war. So here's what we're saying, and we could indicate that the slogan of the peace movement and of the vegan and vegetarian movement should be one and the same. All we're saying is give peas a chance. We need peas on earth, and here's another way, peas on earth. Okay, a little bit of a pun. And okay, so we've gone through 6 main reasons. Quick summary. Best way to preserve our health, to treat animals with compassion, to protect the environment, reduce climate change, serve natural resources, reduce hunger, pursue peace, is through plant-based, mainly vegan diets. And again, give peace a chance. Here's a vegan symbol. And this is unfortunately a choice. In reality, we have a choice between a mainly vegan world and a destroyed world. Because we see what this climate change is already destroying so much and likely to get far worse. So here's something, love animals, go vegan. This is a picture that's hung outside my apartment in my retirement village here in Israel. And it's much easier to be a vegan or vegetarian today because there's so many plant-based substitutes, and they have found that they have the appearance, texture, and taste very close to that of meat and other animal products. They are highly processed, not the highest in health, but they can serve as a transition food and make a difference. And people say this, they just can't give up the taste. What can they do? Well, you can get that same taste with things like Beyond Burger, Beyond Beef, etc. And there's really a movement in that direction. More and more vegan restaurants all over the world, and even the ones that serve meat, all have a number of options clearly indicated on their menus. And there's a trend here, a vegan burger king in Iberia, plant-based is the default in another Burger King, and another Green Branch in London. So many articles about that. There's really a great increase in plant-based substitutes. And here's a reality, a bit of a cartoon. Any animal product can be eaten as a vegan product. Okay, okay. So, uh, getting toward the end, here's this big question. I think of this whenever I hear of a couple getting married and new baby being born. What kind of world are we leaving? I've been blessed since 2016 when I moved to Israel. 4 grandchildren getting married, the birth of 7 great-grandchildren. 5 of them are shown here from one daughter and 2 others from children of another daughter. Okay, so what kind of world are we leaving? Trying to get the word out. Here's that tie I showed before, the vegan t-shirt I'm now wearing. And this was at a veggie pride parade, which was in New York every spring. And in addition, more recently in England, in Israel, where it was the world's largest vegan fest, same t-shirt. Here is a hat from what's called Vegan Friendly, and that's a wonderful group that when you see that in the product, you know it's vegan. And there's a few important articles on my vegan activities, again with that tie, fruit, vegetables, and the type of very environmental action seeking to save our world. We know how much it's threatened. So really, at the end, if you want to really help, I'm the President Emeritus of Jewish Veg on the board. They're doing tremendous work. And the most important thing you can do with your money is invest in ways to leave a decent world for children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And you can go to jewishfaith.org, make a tax-deductible contribution. And finally, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you found the presentation interesting, meaningful. Love to get any comments you have, questions, any ideas for helping. You can email again. Be happy to send you PDFs of 3 of my recent books, including Vegan Revolution and the newly published Judaism and Global Survival, 20th anniversary edition, VeggieRich@gmail.com. So please spread the word on this presentation. Many thanks for watching, and we're signing off.